They say love is blind, but Jung knew better. He saw that what most people call love is often nothing more than projection, an unconscious theater where no one truly sees the other. It always begins in silence, behind a glance that does not see you as you are, but as something imagined, an echo of potential, not presence. You feel it, don't you? That silent gaze that seems to recognize you but somehow leaves you disoriented. Is it reverence, or is it possession in disguise? You think you're being witnessed, but in truth you are being scanned. Not as a man, but as a projection. A blank canvas for a dream she may not even know she's painting. And this dream, this masterpiece, it was never about you. It was about the idea she carries within. Carl Jung warned us of this with the precision of a man who dared to map the abyss of the psyche. His work was not soft nor sentimental. It was scalpel-like, dissecting the illusions between men and women with brutal clarity. At the core of his discoveries lies the unconscious, the invisible architect of our behaviors, our patterns, our silent compulsions. And in this shadowed terrain, Jung uncovered something unsettling. Women often fall, not for the man himself, but for the archetype that lives inside them, their inner masculine, the animus. The animus, when unconscious or distorted, does not love a man as a human being, but as a symbolic placeholder, a figure to animate her internal mythology. Most women do not realize this is happening because projection is rarely conscious. She isn't choosing you, she's choosing the idea of you, the echo of an ancient script, rehearsed since girlhood. You're not in her reality, you're in her fantasy. And when you falter in the role, when your authentic self begins to diverge from the part she casts you in, she will not rewrite the story, she will simply replace the actor. Jung called this psychological position. He described it as a spiritual crisis, where a woman no longer speaks from her soul, but from the autonomous complex of her inner masculine, an inner tyrant that moralizes without compassion, argues without center, and desires danger while rejecting devotion. And you, man, are often seduced by this illusion, because no one ever taught you to discern between being seen and being projected upon. You mistake being desired for being understood. You cling to her words as if they confirm your uniqueness, not knowing that you are merely the next vessel for a story that has nothing to do with you. And when the illusion shatters, when her enchantment turns to blame, you are left disoriented, ashamed, questioning what failure within you caused the unraveling. But the tragedy is not in your failure, it is in the fact that you are never truly known. As Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not merely an essay about women, it is a psychoanalytical call to men, to awaken, to reclaim your reality, and to escape the silent servitude to someone else's fantasy. For only when a man confronts the masks cast upon him can he begin to walk the path of individuation and finally taste the liberation of true inner freedom. But the truth is, you did nothing wrong. You merely ceased to perform in a script that was never yours. You stopped being a convincing actor in a theater built from someone else's fantasy. And that's when the illusion broke. Jung warned that the only true escape from this unconscious performance lies in a path few dare to walk, the path of individuation. It is not a spiritual cliché or a polished ideal, but a raw and lifelong initiation into wholeness. It demands that you break the mirror she holds up to you and face the one within. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. Most men never begin this journey. You were trained to find your reflection in a woman's eyes, to chase her approval as if it were a compass for your worth, to silence your instincts and let others define your significance. As long as this is your compass, you will wander in circles, repeating the same role, wearing the same mask, applauded for a moment, then replaced the moment you stop entertaining the fantasy. As long as this is your compass, you will wander in circles, repeating the same role, wearing the same mask, applauded for a moment, then replaced the moment you stop entertaining the fantasy. Individuation is not romantic. It is not adorned with praise or comfort. It is a brutal disrobing of the psyche. It requires you to walk into the forgotten basement of your soul and confront what you've buried. the weakness, the fear, the shame, the longing to be chosen. It demands you stop blaming women for not seeing you and begin the sacred task of seeing yourself. For Jung understood something most men never will. You do not become a man because she picks you. You become a man when you finally pick yourself. You do not become worthy through her affection. You become worthy the moment you stop needing it. To stand alone, fully awake, fully responsible, fully alive, this is the mark of the individuated man. And a man who has descended into his own unconscious cannot be seduced by projection because he has retrieved the keys to his own image. He no longer plays roles in someone else's play. He writes his own script. He lives from the center, not the stage. Jung observed that the tragedy of the modern man is not in his rejection, but in his willingness to twist himself into whatever form he believes will be accepted. You call it love, you call it compromise, you call it partnership. But Jung had a more honest word for it: self-betrayal. And this betrayal happens not in loud moments, but in quiet ones, in every silent agreement to become less of yourself so that you can be more of what she imagines. Jung warned that men who neglect their inner development become enslaved to the feminine projection, bending themselves like wet clay into forms demanded by women who themselves are unaware of what they truly seek. And the man loses not just her, but himself. You stop being men and start becoming performances, masks stitched together from politeness, predictability, and quiet desperation. Smiling when you wish to speak, nodding when you long to disagree, agreeing to be chosen rather than daring to be real. And over time, something vanishes. The memory of who you were before the mask calcified. Before you abandoned your center for the illusion of connection. But here's the part you don't see. She senses it, more than you can possibly understand. Women feel energy before they understand logic. And what you believe will win her heart. Your availability, your agreeableness, your emotional obedience is the very thing that drains her instinctual attraction. Why? Because, as Jung taught, the feminine is not magnetized by comfort. It is drawn to depth, to the unknown, to the man who cannot be easily labeled or tamed, the man who remains a question rather than a conclusion, the man whose presence carries both strength and silence. And the moment you lay yourself bare, without edge, without boundaries, without the sacred tension of your own soul's gravity, you do not become more lovable, you become forgettable, replaceable. The predictable man is not the man she dreams of, he is the man she forgets. And yet, here lies the great paradox that keeps so many men enchained. You fear being alone more than you fear being false. You would rather betray your essence than face the emptiness of being unchosen. You would rather live as a pleasing illusion than risk standing in your truth without applause. But Jung taught that, until a man embraces that very solitude he fears, he will never taste freedom. He wrote that, individuation is a path not for the faint-hearted, because it requires you to die before you die, to undergo a symbolic death, to allow the counterfeit selves, the pleaser, the puppet, the projected fantasy, to burn away in the fire of inner truth. Only then can something authentic arise from the ashes. Only then does the real man emerge, not as a role, but as a soul. Until you face this inner death, you will remain hidden behind masks that win approval but lose meaning. And you will continue to wonder why love feels so distant, even when you are constantly chosen. But let me speak the truth that most fear to whisper. Individuation is lonely. Not in the ordinary sense, but in the soul-rattling way that makes the ground beneath your life feel unstable. It is terrifyingly lonely because, as you walk deeper into the forest of the self, your eyes begin to adjust to the dark. And once you see, you cannot unsee. You begin to perceive the unspoken games people play, the personas they wear like armor, the fragile lies they cling to in order to feel safe. You see how most relationships are contracts of mutual denial, and when you try to speak from this vision, when you try to share the rawness of what you now know, you are not met with gratitude, you are met with ridicule. They call you cold, arrogant, over-serious. They say you're the problem, but you are not the problem. You are the mirror. And mirrors are hated when they reflect what others are not ready to face. Jung understood this rejection deeply. He spent decades guiding people through the shadows of their psyche, and what he saw most often was fear, not of death, but of seeing oneself without illusion. Fear of the shadow, the dark twin of the conscious self, the hidden impulses, the denied truths, the unacceptable desires that live just beneath the surface. And women, Jung warned, are often raised in a cultural mythology that protects them from confronting this darkness. They are told they are inherently good, purely emotional, spiritually intuitive, and whole, just as they are. But Jung did not romanticize this narrative. He saw the danger of such blindness. He wrote that the greatest psychic threat to women was not the world outside, but their unconscious animus, the inner masculine voice that speaks with false wisdom, unearned conviction, and a moral superiority that is often nothing more than projection in disguise. If this animus remains unconscious, he warned, she becomes its prisoner. She loses sight of her inner world and begins projecting its unresolved tension onto the men around her, demanding from them the very confrontation she refuses to have with herself. And there you are, thinking you'll be the one to save her. That if you just love harder, speak louder, prove yourself more fiercely, she will finally see you, finally choose you. But that is not how projection works. Projection, Jung taught, is a thief. It steals reality and replaces it with illusion. It turns flesh and soul into symbols and fantasies. And until both men and women awaken from this enchanted trance, they will remain trapped in a cycle of blame, heartbreak, and repetition, each pointing the finger outward, never realizing they are entangled not with the other, but with the unclaimed shadows within themselves. And here lies the most ironic twist of all. The woman who once looked at you like a savior will one day look at you like a stranger, or worse, an enemy. Not because you changed, but because you failed to uphold the illusion she silently built around you. You did not betray her. You did not lie. You simply collapsed under the weight of a role you never agreed to play. And yet, in her eyes, your greatest sin will not be your mistakes, but your inability to become the myth she unconsciously projected onto you, the part you were cast in without a script. And the cruelest part? She won't even realize she's doing it. Jung called this betrayal inevitable, when neither man nor woman takes responsibility for their own inner world. The stage was set long before the relationship began, and the characters were written not with ink, but with unresolved wounds. She resents you not for your flaws, but for failing to complete a fantasy she never dared to name. You were never that man, not even for a moment. And yet the disappointment she feels is as real as if you had broken a vow. Jung understood this distortion intimately. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls, he wrote. And perhaps nowhere is this truth more vividly expressed than in romantic love, where two incomplete selves often collide, dragging behind them unmet childhood needs, inherited fears, and silent longings. What we call love is often possession, a psychic entanglement, a longing not to connect, but to fill the void without facing it. And like a man entranced, you enter it again and again, convinced this time will be different. But it isn't. Because the question that breaks the spell still haunts you in silence. What if I am the one responsible for this pattern? You want to blame women. You want to say they manipulate, deceive, discard. But Jung would not let you off so easily. He would look into the part of you that seeks truth and ask, and why did you choose her? Why did you let yourself be chosen by the very person who mirrored your own unexamined wounds? This is not condemnation. It is initiation. Because the man who refuses to face his own feminine inner world, his anima, his vulnerability, his longing to be nurtured, is destined to be a prisoner of hers. Until you integrate her within, you will unconsciously seek her without, drawn to the very women who reflect your inner disconnection. And so the tragedy repeats itself. Not because you are cursed, but because you are unconscious. and nothing changes until you turn inward. You are not a victim, you are a participant, a volunteer in a silent agreement. You chose to play the fool, to step willingly into her inner theater and perform the role she had written long before you arrived, not because you were weak, but because facing your own emptiness, your fractured sense of self, your hunger for wholeness, felt far more terrifying than being adored inside a beautiful illusion. And this is where many will stop listening. This is the threshold, because here the comfort ends and the reckoning begins. Jung offered no easy way out, no polished path to so-called alpha male greatness. He offered fire, the fire of self-confrontation. He demanded that you sit alone in the silence of your own psyche, not to escape it, but to listen, to watch the illusions fracture, to feel the old voices begin to unravel, especially the one that tells you you are nothing without her. That voice will fight like a cornered beast. It will whisper that you need her validation, that without her gaze you disappear, that masculinity must be earned through feminine reflection. But Jung's work whispers a more dangerous truth, one that will cost you your illusions, but return to you your soul. The man who can stand without her, without applause, without being needed, without being admired, is the man who is finally free from projection, free from performance, free from the tyranny of bending your identity to fit the fantasies of others. And when you reach that ground, solid, quiet, unshakable, you do not become cold or aloof, you become real. You become rooted in your own energy, grounded in your own truth, fully alive in the architecture of your own being. And paradoxically, this is when women are most drawn to you, not because you plead, not because you perform, but because you don't. You no longer seek to be chosen, and so your presence becomes magnetic. And when you smile, it is not from pride or indifference, but from recognition. Because now you see clearly, she is on her own sacred path, just as you are. She must confront her own animus. She must awaken from her own illusions. And you cannot do this work for her. You cannot save her. That is not your task. What you can do, as Jung did, is walk your own path with such clarity, such fearless integrity, that your life becomes a mirror, one that reflects the truth back to anyone brave enough to look. Most will flinch and turn away, but a rare few will meet that gaze and thank you for it. And that, my friend, is the difference between being loved for the part you play and being honored for the man you've become. And then it happens, quietly, without drama, like a veil lifting. That moment when you finally realize you don't have to perform anymore. You don't need to charm, to prove, to contort your spirit into a pleasing shape. And that's when something strange begins to unfold. People become uncomfortable around you, restless, uneasy. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it, the shift in your presence. There is weight in your stillness now, a groundedness that doesn't bend to their expectations. You no longer fit the molds they use to organize their fragile sense of safety. Jung warned that the individuated man, the one who has stepped outside the collective illusion, is not embraced by society. He is feared, misunderstood, labeled as cold, arrogant, or detached. But the truth is far more unsettling. You are no longer controllable. You see the game, and worse, you're no longer willing to play it. And here's the strange comedy of it all. The very people who once clung to your attention, who basked in your approval, will now resent your freedom. The ones who once called you desirable will now call you distant. Especially women still caught in the fantasy of the ideal man. They'll say you're too in your head, too intellectual, too unavailable. But what they really mean is that you've stepped off their stage. You're no longer reading lines from a script they didn't even know they handed you, and in the absence of performance, they are left facing something unfamiliar. A man who is no longer a projection, but a presence. You are no longer an actor, you are the author, and that terrifies them. Jung once joked that the gods have become diseases. That what ancient cultures saw as divine possession, modern psychology now names as neurosis. And nothing reveals that truth more than a man obsessed with earning love. You think you're being romantic when you whisper, "She's my everything," or when you proclaim, "I'd do anything for her." But Jung would look deeper and see not devotion, but a quiet refusal. A refusal to carry your own soul. Instead, you hand her your essence, your hope, your meaning, your very sense of purpose. Because as long as she carries it, you don't have to. You believe that's love, but it's not. It's projection. It's spiritual avoidance in disguise. And here's the brutal twist. She will drop it. She must. Because no woman, no matter how nurturing, can carry the weight of a man who refuses to carry himself. And when she lets it fall, when she stops being your lifeline, you will feel betrayed, abandoned, hollow. But you shouldn't. You should thank her. Because in that shattering moment, when the illusion dies and your soul is no longer outsourced, you finally come face to face with the truth. The work of becoming a man was never hers to do. It was always yours. And in that raw, soul-splitting moment of clarity, life places two paths before you. One leads to resentment, to bitterness, to the chorus of wounded men who mock what they do not understand and blame what they refuse to face. You can join them, pointing your finger outward, cursing her for dropping the soul you handed her, like a coward clinging to blame to avoid the ache of your own inner emptiness. Or you can do what Jung would have demanded of you. You can turn inward. You can begin the sacred, brutal work of individuation, the path of becoming whole without needing to be completed by another. Because here is the truth that cuts the deepest. The woman you seek out there is a reflection of the part of yourself you have long abandoned. And until you reclaim that part, every relationship will be a disguise, every connection a transaction, every act of love a beautiful lie. But when you finally face what you feared, when you confront your own inner feminine, your anima, your longing, your grief, you no longer chase women. You no longer manipulate, perform, or audition. You stand still, rooted, present. And from that inner ground, something extraordinary begins to unfold. You no longer attract women who crave performance. You attract women who crave truth. And you will know it, not because she praises you, but because she no longer demands a role from you. She won't ask you to bend. She won't fall for the fantasy. She will arrive not as a goddess to be worshipped, but as a human being who has walked her own sacred path. She will come unmasked. She will not project onto you, nor beg to be saved. She will not see you as her missing piece, but as her equal, because she has faced her shadow. She has danced with her animus. She has burned through her illusions and emerged from that fire whole. And that is why she will not meet you to perform. She will not hand you her soul to carry. She will hold her own and meet you eye to eye. Not as a sculptor shaping you into what she needs, but as a woman finally ready to meet a man. No clinging, no desperation, no scripts, only truth. And that kind of truth, Jung taught, is the rarest and most dangerous form of love, the kind that asks for nothing, yet offers everything. Because it is not born of dependency, but of freedom. The freedom to walk away, the freedom to stay, the freedom to choose love, without illusion, without need, without fear. But let me offer a final warning. Most men will never taste this love, not because it isn't real, but because they will turn back too soon. They will choose the comfort of performance over the terror of authenticity. They will choose the fantasy over the truth. They will keep playing roles to feel wanted rather than shedding layers to become whole. But if you are one of the few, the brutally honest few, who dare to keep going, who dare to strip away every false mask in the silence of your becoming, then you will find yourself standing at the edge of something unspeakably beautiful. You will no longer look to women to make you feel like a man. That burden will have died. You will no longer see them as reflections of your worth, but as something else entirely. Not prizes, but partners. Not mothers, but mirrors. Not saviors, but allies. And you will love them not to feel whole, but because you already are. Because your love will come from power, not lack. From knowing. Carl Jung did not leave you a map. He left you a warning. That the man who refuses to confront himself will forever be enslaved by the projections of others, especially the projections of women. But he also left you a challenge. A challenge to walk the solitary, soul-forgorging path of individuation. To stop blaming women for the masks you chose to wear. To stop seeking salvation in their eyes. To stop waiting to be chosen like a child when you were always meant to choose yourself. Because the man who chooses himself fully, unapologetically, relentlessly, is the man who cannot be controlled by fantasy. He cannot be seduced by illusion. He cannot be reduced to a role in someone else's dream. He becomes the author of his own life, and that, above all, is what makes him truly free. If something within this message stirred you, if even a single word mirrored your inner experience, I invite you to let your voice be heard in the comments. Have you encountered that soul whose presence feels like home, or are you still walking the sacred path back to yourself? Your story, however unfinished, may become the lantern in someone else's darkness, the very sign they didn't know they were searching for. And if someone close to you is silently struggling with the illusion that love must hurt, that self-abandonment is the price of connection, or that they are unworthy of peace, share this video with them. Help me reach the ones who need to remember. Real love does not demand that we shrink. True connection does not ask for sacrifice of the soul. And the most vital union we will ever form is the one with our own inner truth. Before you go, I invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. Here, in this space, we journey beneath the surface of things, exploring the hidden architecture of the psyche, the whispers of the unconscious, and how every relationship is but a mirror reflecting our personal evolution. If there's a theme, a question, or a wound you would like us to explore in future videos, leave it below. This space breathes because of you. Your voice is not only welcome here, it is essential. Thank you for showing up, not just to this video, but to your inner work, to the sacred labor of remembering who you truly are. And always remember this: when the right person appears, your soul will know, not through fear, but through peace. But until that moment, let your most intimate relationship be the one you cultivate within. That is the foundation, that is the home. And from that wholeness, all things real are born. Until next time, I'll see you on the path.